Yo, 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 America! Welcome back to the show that always keeps it 100. You know what they say, right? Keep your friends close, and your enemies closer. But what happens when the enemy is within? Throughout history, the black community has faced some seriously messed up situations, but nothing stings quite like betrayal from your own. We're talking about those times when people from the community, for whatever messed up reason, money, fear, maybe even some twisted sense of self-preservation, decided to throw their own people under the bus. These weren't just random acts of shade. We're talking about betrayals that had real consequences, real pain, and real setbacks in the fight for black liberation. So buckle up, my friends, because today, we're diving deep into the shadows, shining a light on 10 shocking acts of treachery that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty and the fight for equality. Okay, let's kick things off with William Hannibal Thomas, a man who, and I'm just saying, seemed to have a serious case of the man's foot stuck firmly in his mouth. Now, I'm all for a good debate, a healthy difference of opinion, but this dude took it to a whole other level. In 1901, he drops this book, The American Negro, What He Was, What He Is, and What He May Become. Catchy, right? Well, the title was about the only good thing about it. Thomas goes full-on savage, basically arguing that black people were inherently inferior. I mean, he really went there. And you know who loved it? Yep, you guessed it, the white supremacists. They were all over that book like flies on. Well, you get the picture. Here's the thing. Thomas wasn't just some random dude spouting off at the mouth. He was a Harvard-educated lawyer, a freaking historian, and get this, he was a former slave himself. Talk about a plot twist. This wasn't just ignorance, this felt personal, like some deep-seated self-hatred that he was projecting onto the entire community. Now, I'm not saying we should erase him from history or anything, but we gotta learn from these messy situations. Thomas's story reminds us that internalized oppression is real, and sometimes it manifests in the most damaging ways. It's like that old saying, hurt people hurt people. But here's the thing about pain, my friends, it doesn't have to define us. We can choose to heal, to rise above, and to fight for our community, not against it. Alright, let's take a trip back in time, back to the days of the transatlantic slave trade. Now I know what you're thinking, Trevor, this is a heavy one, and you're right, it is. But it's a conversation we need to have. See, when we talk about the slave trade, we often focus on the European colonizers. The ones who came in and ripped apart families and communities. And don't get me wrong, they were the architects of this horrific system. But it's often overlooked is the role that some African leaders played. That's right, folks, not all heroes wear capes, and some even wore crowns. In kingdoms like Dahomey and Asante, some chiefs saw an opportunity in all the chaos. Instead of uniting against a common enemy, they cut deals with the devil, literally. They traded their own people, often captured from rival tribes, for guns, for wealth, for power. It's enough to make you sick to your stomach. This wasn't just about survival, it was about ambition, greed, and a shocking disregard for the humanity of their own people. These leaders were willing to sacrifice the freedom of their own for a taste of power, and that, my friends, is a betrayal that echoes through generations. It's a stain on history, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, when unity is paramount, the allure of power can corrupt even the most well-intentioned. Let's talk about Ellen Craft, a woman who knew a thing or two about courage. In 1848, she escaped slavery in the most daring way possible, by disguising herself as a white man. I mean, talk about commitment. But her story takes a dark turn when her own half-brother, a slave catcher, is sent to bring her back. Imagine that, folks. Your own flesh and blood, hunting you down to drag you back to a life of chains and misery. It's a betrayal that cuts deep, a reminder that family ties can be tangled up in the ugliest ways. Ellen's story is a stark reminder of the complexities of slavery, where loyalty was often tested, and the lines between right and wrong were blurred by the institution's brutality. Chapter 4. Stephen from 12 Years a Slave, a Necessary Evil or a Traitor. Now let's talk about a character that's been sparking debates for years. Stephen from Solomon Northup's harrowing memoir, 12 Years a Slave. Stephen is the epitome of a complex character, a man trapped in the depths of slavery who chooses to align himself with his enslavers. He informs on his fellow slaves, enforces the rules, and becomes a tool of the very system that oppresses him. Some might call him a survivor, arguing that he did what he had to do to stay alive. But others see him as a traitor, a collaborator who betrayed his own people to curry favor with the oppressor. So which is it? Was Stephen a victim of circumstance or a perpetrator of the system? The truth is, it's probably a bit of both. Stephen's story forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that survival under oppression can often come at a moral cost. It's a reminder that the lines between good and evil, victim and perpetrator, can become blurred in the face of unimaginable cruelty. Chapter 5. William O'Neill and the Black Panthers, a betrayal for the ages. Okay, fast forward to the 1960s, the era of Black Power, the Black Panthers, and a whole lot of government paranoia. Enter William O'Neill, a man who infiltrated the Black Panther Party not as a brother-in-arms but as an informant for the FBI. Now, infiltrating a revolutionary group is one thing, but O'Neill took it to a whole other level. He rose through the ranks, gaining the trust of some of the most influential figures in the movement, all the while feeding information to the very people who sought to destroy them. And then came the ultimate betrayal. O'Neill's information led to the assassination of Fred Hampton, the charismatic chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party. Hampton, a rising star in the movement, was gunned down in his sleep, betrayed by a man he considered a comrade. O'Neill's actions sent shockwaves through the black community, exposing the depths of government surveillance and the lengths to which they would go to silence dissent. It was a sobering reminder that even in the fight for freedom, betrayal can lurk in the shadows, ready to strike at the heart of the movement. Chapter 6. Whispers in the Night Betrayal. During Nat Turner's rebellion, let's journey back to the year 1831, to the heart of the American South, where Nat Turner, a preacher and a prophet of sorts, ignited a rebellion that would shake the foundations of slavery. Turner's rebellion, a beacon of hope for the enslaved, was a carefully planned uprising, a desperate cry for freedom. But even in the midst of this righteous struggle, betrayal reared its ugly head. As Turner and his followers moved from plantation to plantation, whispers of the rebellion spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of those who would rather see their own people in chains than risk their own necks. Some enslaved individuals, driven by fear, by loyalty to their enslavers, or perhaps by a misguided belief that they could preserve some semblance of order by maintaining the status quo, informed their masters of Turner's plans. This betrayal, a devastating blow to the rebellion, led to its swift and brutal suppression. Turner and many of his followers were captured and executed, their dream of freedom extinguished in a torrent of violence. Okay, let's fast forward to the late 20th century, a time when the war on drugs was raging and mass incarceration was becoming the new Jim Crow. Now, I know what you're thinking. What does this have to do with betrayal? Well, hold on tight, because this one gets complicated. During this era, we saw the rise of tough-on-crime policies that disproportionately targeted black and brown communities. These policies, often championed by politicians from both sides of the aisle, led to an explosion in the prison population, with black men and women being locked up at alarming rates. Now here's where the betrayal comes in. Some black leaders, often driven by a desire to appear tough on crime or to appeal to a wider, read whiter electorate, supported these policies. They argued that these laws were necessary to keep communities safe, that they were cracking down on criminals and thugs. But the reality is these policies were often used to target and criminalize black and brown people for minor offenses, trapping them in a cycle of poverty, incarceration, and disenfranchisement. Let's talk about a chapter in black history that's often whispered about but rarely discussed openly, the role of black slave catchers. Now I know what you're thinking, black slave catchers, isn't that a contradiction in terms? And you'd be right to question it. But the truth is, in the twisted reality of slavery, some free black individuals participated in capturing and returning runaway slaves, aiding in the very system that sought to dehumanize and oppress them. It's a painful truth, a betrayal that cuts deep and raises uncomfortable questions about survival, complicity, and the moral complexities of a society built on the backs of enslaved people. Some black slave catchers may have justified their actions as a means of survival, a way to navigate a world where their freedom was constantly under threat. Others may have bought into the racist ideology of the time, believing that black people were inferior and deserving of their enslavement. Whatever their reasons, the actions of black slave catchers had devastating consequences for the enslaved community, sowing seeds of distrust and fear. It's a reminder that even within oppressed groups, there can be those who choose to side with the oppressor, either out of self-preservation or a misguided sense of loyalty. Let's journey to the Caribbean, to the island nation of Haiti, a place where the chains of slavery were shattered in a glorious revolution. In 1791, enslaved Africans in Haiti, led by Toussaint Louverture, rose up against their French colonial masters, igniting a firestorm that would forever change the course of history. The Haitian Revolution, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who dared to fight for their freedom, resulted in the abolition of slavery and the establishment of the first Black Republic in the Western Hemisphere. But the road to freedom, as we know, is rarely paved with smooth stones. In the aftermath of the revolution, as Haiti struggled to rebuild and redefine itself, some of its own leaders betrayed the ideals they had fought so hard to achieve. Henry Christophe, a hero of the revolution, declared himself king, and reinstituted forced labor systems that eerily resembled the very system they had fought to overthrow. Christophe's actions, driven by a desire to maintain order and rebuild the nation's shattered economy, ultimately undermined the principles of liberty and equality that had been at the heart of the revolution. Okay, let's bring it back to the 21st century, to a story that had everyone scratching their heads and asking, what in the world is going on? I'm talking about Rachel Dolezal, the former NAACP chapter president who, well, let's just say she took keeping it real to a whole new level. Dolezal, a white woman, spent years presenting herself as a black woman, even going so far as to change her appearance and fabricate stories about her life. Now, I'm all for embracing different cultures and identities, but Dolezal's story wasn't about cultural appreciation. It was about appropriation, about taking on the identity of a marginalized group for personal gain. Her actions sparked outrage and disbelief, with many accusing her of blackface, cultural appropriation, and straight-up fraud. Dolezal's story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of exploiting racial identity and the importance of authenticity in social justice movements. So, there you have it, folks. 10 stories of betrayal, 10 moments in Black history that remind us that the fight for freedom and equality is often a battle fought on multiple fronts. These stories are not meant to shame or divide, but to spark conversation, to encourage reflection, and to remind us that the struggle for Black liberation is ongoing. We've seen how internalized oppression, greed, fear, and the lust for power can lead individuals to betray their own communities. But we've also seen the resilience of the human spirit, the unwavering commitment to justice, and the power of unity in the face of adversity. As we move forward, let us remember these stories, not with anger or bitterness, but with a renewed sense of purpose, a commitment to building bridges of understanding, and a dedication to creating a world where betrayal is a relic of the past and justice reigns supreme.